I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Mascot Horror sucks. I know, this just in, poop smells like shit. Nothing gets me more upset than seeing some new Mascot Horror game come out. For some reason, it does amazing, but it's just one of the worst things I've seen. And I'll admit it used to be a good genre. But as of late, it's just slop after slop, and people eat that shit up like they are on death row and that is their final meal. However, Mascot Horror might be entering some form of renaissance. And if you guys want to hear more about it and other things relating to Mascot Horror, then you should subscribe. That way you know when I upload another shitty take about games you love or talk about a game in a stupid way. And you can even leave a comment and yell at me for how bad my take is or the video is. But anyway, let's talk about that one game with the haunted mascots. No. Not you. Okay, fuck off. You! I want to talk about you! Poppy Playtime for me is all over the place in terms of quality, gameplay, and horror. The first chapter was a nothing burger that was just a proof of concept, while the second chapter actually focused on better gameplay and was really fun. However, it was not scary at all. Then chapter 3 is when they really locked in and found their footing, having just amazing gameplay and multiple instances of the game where I was so scared to continue. I'd have to sit there in the pause menu and prep myself for like what was to come next. They found like that perfect mix of just good puzzles, fun gameplay, and actual horror in my Mascot Horror game. It was an amazing chapter that had me extremely excited for the next chapter. Then it released, and it was really bad. It was so full of bugs, it was like playtesting wasn't even invented yet. And even taking away the bugs, the gameplay was so boring and confusing that at least the bugs gave the players something to look at. It was just overall rushed and was not thought out well. They'd rather ask, what sounds cool, than what is fun, and then did it. Hopefully they take their time with chapter 5 and bring it back, because I know they know how to make a good game. Chapter 3 proves that. Also, there's something I was realizing. Nope. Also, there was something I realized while working on this video. Currently, the price for every chapter in the game combined is $45 to $50 if you bought chapter 1 before they made it free, which is fucked up for not giving anything to the fans who bought chapter 1, by the way. And chapter 5 is probably going to be $25 if they keep following their pricing model, which means for the whole game you're going to be spending either $70 to $75. To put that in perspective, Elden Ring, Final Fantasy XVI, Spider-Man 2, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Persona 3 Reload, Expedition 33, Breath of the Wild, and Persona 5 are all either just as much as Poppy Playtime or less than Poppy Playtime. And to put it into even more perspective, let's take a look at the things that cost the same as Chapter 4 of Poppy Playtime, if not cheaper. Bendy and the Ink Machine, Left 4 Dead 2, Gary's Mod, Undertale, Deltarune, Balatro, Bollock's Pit, Risk of Rain 2, Hades, Haste, Megabonk, Nubby's Number Factory, Repo, Void, Castle Crashers, Clover Pit, Clone Drone in the Danger Zone, Choo-Choo Charles, Dark Deception, Tattletail, Animal, any Batman Arkham game, The Binding of Isaac, Everhood, Inscription, Lethal Company, Neon White, Persona 4 Golden, Pizza Tower, Rain World, Squirrel with a Gun, Power Wash Simulator, Ultra Kill, and over half of the fucking FNaF franchise. I know there's a handful of games in there worth $25, and I'm not trying to hand wave it away by saying they're close enough. However, I do think Chapter 5 is going to be $25, which is why I included some of these games at these price points. And if the chapter ends up being $20, you can disregard any $25 game I put on this list, because even if you do that, the games here that cost as much or less than one chapter of Poppy Playtime is actually insane. And these are just the games I know. There is a whole sea of games out there that have infinitely more content in them for infinitely less. Now, I know some of these games are vastly different genres, but I am comparing the fact that these are all full game experiences that are as much as a single chapter of Poppy Playtime, if not cheaper. And I'm sorry to say this, but this game cannot compare to literally any of the games mentioned. Even if you're looking at Chapter 3, which is the best thing they've put out so far, it doesn't compare. Even Secrets of the Mimic was $40 for the whole complete game, and it is also just way better in gameplay, story, and quality than Chapter 4. So while I hope they get their stuff together for Chapter 5 and end it with a bang, I still am baffled they think this much money for their game is worth it. And the fact that I don't see anybody talking about the prices is insane to me. I only gave Poppy Playtime this little brief overview because while making this segment, I realized how much I could talk about Poppy Playtime. And so I've decided I'm going to make that its own whole video about the goods and the bads. So stay tuned for that whenever Chapter 5 releases in a couple of weeks. This one I feel is a lot less of a hot take, but I hate Hello Neighbor. It's a series that feels like it just can't tell what it wants to do with it. The first game felt like a platformer mixed with a puzzle game mixed with a quote-unquote horror game mixed with a fucking fever dream. Look at this house and tell me that that looks like a normal house that someone would live in and let alone wouldn't immediately get raided by the cops. The first game showed they had no genuine grasp of level design. The final act was all over the place, having you suddenly get upgrades and doing these puzzles that weren't really puzzles and more platforming challenges. The first two acts were pretty decent. Act 1 was good, although very simple, and Act 2 was a bit more difficult, but it felt an annoying amount of difficult rather than a challenging amount of difficult. It was still a decent act, though. Then when you get to Act 3, they just throw everything out the window and have you go through Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. I wish I could say Hello Neighbor 2 was as good of a sequel as Bendy and the Dark Revival was, but unfortunately it isn't. I will say they improved the level design a lot. They have you go through tons of different houses in a town instead of one giant clusterfuck, which was a very refreshing and great idea. However, the gameplay is very buggy and not very fun, because a lot of the puzzles are once again more annoying than anything. But I am willing to chalk that up to me being a dumbass though, because not that smart. I'm a man on the internet writing about video games. I just hope that whatever they churn out for the third game is something worth the $40 price tag. And similarly to Hello Neighbor, FNaF hasn't really been on the best hot streak either. If you've watched any of my previous videos, this isn't going to come as a shock to you, but I think FNaF fucking sucks. It's bad. Ever since Sister Location, they have all been misses. Some bigger misses than others, but all still inevitably misses. I'm not going to go too deep into each game because that's a future endeavor, but it's pretty obvious I don't think Sister Location was a good game. FNaF 6 was heavily carried by its tycoon, with the night section being underexplained and overcomplicated. Ultimate Custom Night was just there so no lives could flex their pheromone maxing. Help Wanted was pretty good, it's just really buggy. And Security Breach is honestly one of the worst games I have ever played ever. Ruin is a visual novel. 5 Laps at Freddy's.
I want to go home.
And Secrets of the Mimic was actually pretty good. Thumbs up. Steel will keep slaying. FNaF stopped being scary after FNaF 4. It never has really been fear-inducing until, say it with me class, Secrets of the Mimic. And they are so focused on telling this really crappy story that they all forgot that they were supposed to make a game alongside a story. You know your series is sad when you have a mountain of fan games that are either more fun or scarier than the games they are based on. However, I won't rip on FNaF any more than I just did because I do think they are making a comeback with the series, which is amazing to see. I used to love this series and have fallen out of love with it because of the recent games, but if they keep this momentum and genuinely take the criticism, FNaF could make an amazing comeback. However, there is also another series that has made a huge comeback as of late and showed that mascot horror can be more than just some kid's game. Bendy and the Ink Machine was considered one of the greats in mascot horror. However, it really wasn't that good. Chapter 1 was a tech demo with you just walking around an office space, finding items, and calling it a puzzle with a half-baked chase at the end. Chapter 2 was starting to show some potential for the series by trying to do some genuine puzzles and creating real combat. Then they dropped a fetch quest for an entire chapter in Chapter 3. Chapter 4 was pretty decent, all things considered, with interesting locations, pretty cool boss fights, and some extra little stuff on the side to do for fun. And then Chapter 5 was super boring, slow, and buggy. Not once when I played that series as a kid did I feel scared. Never worried about what would come around the corner, which I feel like for a mascot horror game, you would have something scary in the game. At most, you get an unpleasant feeling at certain points of the game. But for me, at the very least, it was never fear. Even the puzzles really weren't puzzles. So everything in the game that was promoted as a major selling point falls short. It prided itself on its puzzles and horror, but there was no horror and there were no good puzzles. There might be maybe one or two, but if there are, then I completely forgot about them. However, Bendy and the Dark Revival was an amazing game and sequel. It defines its own unique style more while leaning into more fun gameplay and puzzles. While at the same time, it focuses more on that horror aspect. By no means was it super scary or anything, but there were moments in the game where I felt the tension and genuine fear for what could come next. It was an amazing development of the series, and I hope they keep that momentum going with the third and final Bendy game. Now, what if they took this game and went in the exact opposite direction of trying to make it scary and fun and made it a shitty kids puzzle game? Garten of BanBan, I feel like I don't even need to give an introduction, let alone an explanation to. Like, look at this. How am I supposed to be scared of this? I've heard it's gotten quote-unquote better, whatever that looks like.
Help me!
But this series isn't scary or fun. It's a slop series that gained its following for being a slop series. I admit, I was a part of that problem. I have made a video on it in the past, but it does seem like they are embracing what they've made isn't scary, and even the game being just stupid at points. Beyond that, I don't understand how it even has a real following. It feels regurgitated over and over and over. I know they're trying to go with some kind of story now, but like, man, you gotta try hard to make a game that looks like it was designed by a literal kindergartner scary. To me, Baldi's Basics is quite literally pushing what is even considered a mascot horror. This game has no horror in it. It isn't scary. Are you telling me I'm supposed to be scared of this bald guy? I think he is more scared of the fact that I have a whole head of hair than I am of his lack of hair. Although I will say, it makes him look like a naked mole rat, or whatever those one mole rats from Fallout look like. The game isn't bad by any means. I think it has a fun gameplay loop, and the new Baldi's Basics game that is being made looks really fun, with tons of different art styles for characters, and just all of these new ideas for different puzzles and gameplay elements. Just in terms of mascot horror, they chose false. Throughout all these mascot horror games, I think there is only one mascot horror game that does everything just extremely well to a T, base model what every mascot horror game should be like. Tattletail is an amazing example of what mascot horror games should look like. It realizes its strengths and it realizes its weaknesses, like how they use a house setting to make everything creepier, like something broke in and it's out for you. And they realize the weakness that is their designs aren't scary. So to make up for that, they put the main threat of the game in the darkness, or in the shadows, making it harder to see the model and leaving your mind up to interpretation for what could be out there. Because if they knew Mama was on the forefront of the whole game, it wouldn't be scary. So instead, they hid her in the darkness to give her a more imposing feeling, and also had segments where she wouldn't attack you, just so the players would psych themselves out, making the game even more scary, and even though there was nothing there. So they found a way to take a character that wasn't scary and make her scary through the use of darkness, enclosed spaces, and allowing the player's mind to wander. On top of that, the story isn't complicated and people aren't arguing over it. The story is cut and dry and starts and ends. Overall, it is an amazing experience and probably the best mascot horror experience. Now, there is a group of mascot horror games that all kind of fall under the same umbrella of like, it's a really good game. It's just not scary and doesn't attempt to be scary. Like Choo-Choo Charles. That game in no way is scary. However, it is an amazing game that has a lot of passion and is an extremely fun game to play. I personally really like it. I just don't think it fits under the mascot horror genre, because as I've said, it's just not scary in any way, shape, or form. Dark Deception is another one of those games. While they can have unsettling designs in their game, it's never downright creepy or scary. The gameplay is super fun though. Having to evade the enemies using powers you unlock on the way while collecting all of the gems is really fun. Then Amanda the Adventurer, from what I've seen of the game, the puzzles look challenging and actually fun to try and figure out, unlike Hello Neighbors puzzles. However, the graphics aren't the best. I understand that the graphics are intentionally meant to look like that, but like, come on. Look at this monster and just tell me you're scared of it. It looks like it's covered its face in cotton swabs, threw a Mickey Mouse cap on, and stuck some toothpicks in its mouth. I once again want to reiterate that while these games have no ounce of anything scary or slightly unsettling moments, that doesn't mean they're bad. The best example of this is My Friendly Neighborhood. The game is technically a mascot horror game, but let's get real. It's just Resident Evil, but with Kermit the Frog as the mastermind. I don't mean that as a bad thing. It still, like I said, the game is extremely fun, but it recognizes it's not scary. So instead of trying to overcompensate by adding creepy atmosphere, it leans into the humor of the situation, having all of these puppets walking around saying really dumb and funny things, so it leans into its strengths instead of trying to make the game something it's not. And the game is leagues better for it. Just ignoring the horror aspect of them, these games stand really well on their own 2 feet, and I am excited to see what the future of some of these series might bring. I have mentioned earlier in this video that I believe mascot horror is going through a form of renaissance, which it is. Five Nights at Freddy's Secrets of the Mimic was an amazing game that brought that classic Five Nights at Freddy's feel to the 3rd dimension. Bendy and the Dark Revival took everything that Bendy and the Ink Machine did wrong and did it not just good, but amazing, with a 3rd and final game on the way because, I quote, all good stories come to an end. Even the other games I mentioned earlier that weren't scary but still fun and good games in their own right have been becoming more commonplace. Obviously, for every good mascot horror game, there is going to be another Garten of BanBan to follow, but people are genuinely trying again. Mascot horror could be a genre that doesn't get scoffed at when someone says, "Did you see that new mascot horror game?" The only deciding factor on whether mascot horror can make a comeback or not, though, is if these companies really want to put in that effort to make something good. And if they choose not to, then I think that's up to us to show them that they're going in the wrong direction by not purchasing their products. Garten of BanBan. But I want to thank you guys for watching this video. I'm trying to make a lot more content this year than I did last year, and I have a goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so please, if you did like this kind of content, or even this video, or if you did, even if you didn't like the video, I love when people don't like my videos. I love that conversation that we can have. So please leave a comment. I will respond. Leave a comment with your own opinions on what you think I was being too harsh about or too nice about. I just want to hear it, and I want to have that conversation. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks.